Okay, so before I get loads of people in the comments saying, oh, why are you comparing these two cameras? Obviously they're in different price brackets. I'm well aware. I know these cameras are completely different tools for different use cases, but I do still think this is a really interesting comparison to see just how well the Fujifilm X100VI stacks up against a camera almost 10 times its price. Okay, so two cameras, two entirely different use cases and definitely price points. I've got to admit, I love shooting with both of these cameras for very different reasons, and there's actually a lot of things that the Fuji does quite a lot better than the Hasselblad X2D, and we will talk about all of those in this video. So first off, let's talk about the build, the usability, the designs of these camera bodies, because it's certainly a way in which the Hasselblad differentiates itself from the pack when we are talking about camera bodies. The Fuji is not a badly built camera, it is mostly metal and glass construction. It's pretty sturdy, but the Hasselblad brings things to the next level. Everything about this camera is beautiful and sturdy and reliable. It feels like you're using not just a tool, but a premium tool. Before I actually got this camera, I never would have said this, but it kind of makes the X100VI feel like a toy, and I think it will with pretty much any camera system. That's obviously why it costs so much. The main body is machined out of one piece of aluminium. It's just absolutely gorgeous construction. It's got this whopping great massive screen on the back, which is just incredible for reviewing. All of the compartments and components are again like flush and machined. Listen to this, ready? Oof. Everything is sort of high quality and premium about this camera, which of course is also something you should expect for that price point. But one area which the X100VI obviously excels is its size. You are going to be getting a fantastic image quality for such a portable small form factor on the X100VI, whereas the Hasselblad is obviously much larger. Just a little side note, I have just launched these presets. It's a project that I've been working on for a long time now. I've called it the Fake Film Club because basically these are film inspired presets. I actually commissioned a professional colorist to design the presets, and because I wanted them to actually be really good. I wanted to not put out some more presets that you're going to download, you might slap on an image once, and nine times out of 10 you might not like the way it looks. Like these are handcrafted from the ground up to look great on almost any image that you throw at it. So I will link Fake Film Club down below. Please just, have a browse around and have a play. I would love to know what you guys think. So probably the biggest, most significant difference between these two cameras, which won't be news to many people watching this video, is of course the X100VI is a crop sensor camera. So it shoots at a crop factor of around about 1.5, so it's a 23mm focal range, and that ends up being about a 35mm equivalent. On the Hasselblad, it is medium format, so you are getting a massive sensor in this thing. It's absolutely huge. The amount of data that it takes is absolutely incredible. You get tons of dynamic range, tons of data available, and again, these are kind of night and day in terms of pound for pound image quality. That is all what Hasselblad is about. But let's jump into Lightroom and go through some images side by side to see how these two cameras did. Alrighty, so as you can see, I have 4 images here. These two shot on the Fuji, and then these two shot on the Hasselblad. And they basically will give you a kind of a good reference point. So this one's obviously a properly exposed image on both. And then this, I just didn't want to clip the highlights, so I wanted to almost like test the shadow recovery and dynamic range of the two cameras. So first of all, we can just have a look at this image here. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see this is the obvious significant difference between the two cameras. If we are to do that on the other image, even though we're at 100% zoom here into the image, you could crop this and essentially end up with an image that looked like this, and you still essentially have a perfect image on the Hasselblad. If you are to do that on the Fuji, there's just not enough data to play with. Even though it's a 40 megapixel sensor, things look like a dramatic crop. And if you do that on the Hasselblad, it's just not the case. Things are really, really beautiful here. And there's something also just in terms of an image characteristic, you can actually see there's almost like a haze, a glow to the Hasselblad's image. If you look at the Fuji, it's much more clinical. Let's reset these crops here. I will just add back in the profile adjustment. But you can see that even the Fuji, which is a relatively, obviously it's quite a stylistic camera, it's not a clinical camera, you can still see that there is a significant difference just in terms of stylistic look on the Hasselblad RAW file. It just produces gorgeous images. Okay, so let's move on to the underexposed image here. You can see on the Hasselblad, we'll start with the Hasselblad, and I'm going to, you can see that there's a little bit of clipping here. I mean, it's pretty close. It's not actually clipping, but we'll pull that down just a bit. And I'm going to boost the shadows right up. We will increase exposure. Again, dial back the highlights. Obviously, this is turning into a bit like an HDR. You can see the amount of data you get back. And if you zoom in, you're actually not adding a ton of artificial noise in, considering how much you're actually recovering. That is really pretty impressive. If we do the same thing on the Fuji, let's have a look at this here. We'll add in the shadows, we'll increase the exposure, and we'll pull down the highlights. But you'll be able to see, look at that. In terms of the image breaking down, it is really significantly different. Like that is, again, one of the things that you're paying for such an expensive camera. The dynamic range and the sensor size, the medium format aspect of the camera, the sheer level of detail, data recovery is just exceptional. So of course this one is going to be preference. Not many people will be buying a medium format camera without the intention or the desire or the requirement to actually be shooting medium format in the first place, of course. If you're shooting primarily just to take lots of photos and share some on social media, of course you're probably not going to go for a camera like this. The medium format allows you to do things like print and work in very high fidelity files, whereas the X100VI is not really geared for that type of work. It was also quite noticeable shooting that comparison. I tried to keep the settings similar, but when I actually matched the settings on the Hasselblad to the Fuji was almost like pitch black. The amount of light that is able to be collected in the medium, the kind of massive medium format sensor on the Hasselblad is really significant. And once we're talking about sensor size, chances are every time you've seen someone live streaming, they're probably using a big camera setup like the one that I have filming me right now. And that is because these big cameras like this have big, massive sensors. But of course that means they come with a pretty massive footprint size. And that brings us on to the OBSBOT Tiny 2. This tiny little webcam packs a 1/1.5 inch CMOS sensor with dual native ISO, and that results in amazing picture quality from a webcam for whatever you're doing, be it video calls or live streaming. Here is a comparison to the webcam on my Apple Studio display, and as you can see, it is a noticeable difference in terms of quality, and let me tell you, this monitor is not cheap. In fact, more and more streamers are switching to webcams like this, so much so that OBSBOT is the official partner of the Esports World Cup this year. It comes with other really useful features like AI face tracking, gesture control, and one of the fastest autofocusing systems on the market for a webcam like this. Right now for Prime Day, you can get 20% off the OBSBOT Tiny 2 4K webcam. So if you're wanting to get quality you might get out of a much larger camera system in this tiny little form factor for your video calling or your live streaming, and also if you want it to cost a fraction of the price of a much larger camera setup, you can check out the top link in the description. Let's get back to the video. So you know at the start of the video I mentioned things that the Fuji does that are just better than the Hasselblad. One of them is autofocus. Now Hasselblad of course is not known for its autofocus performance, and it does have autofocus on the X2D, and they have kind of invested a lot of focus into actually improving the autofocusing system on Hasselblad systems moving forward. The only issue that I have had with the Hasselblad is sometimes you are using the autofocus and there isn't much sort of like sophistication in the autofocusing system. Like it doesn't have really good tracking and things like that. You do kind of have just like single tap and touch focus and things like that. The issue that I have with it is it tends to miss a lot, but it's actually quite bad missing. So you would go to take a photo, you press and it will go green like you'd focused on a shot, and then you actually zoom in, and because the images are such high fidelity, you realize that that focus is ever so slightly off. That is not the case on the Fuji. The autofocusing performance is actually really accurate, pretty fast. It's definitely not something which Fuji has been fantastic with, particularly on the X100 line. Like the X100V did used to misfocus quite a bit, but the performance seems much improved in the X100VI. It's obviously not in line with things like Sony's or like more professional video systems where the autofocus is absolutely fantastic now. But for what you need in a system like this, the fact that the X100VI has almost like better, more reliable autofocusing performance than a camera literally almost 10 times its price is pretty wild. An important aspect of that as well is because, again, the files are so massive, it's actually very, very easy, even when you're manually focusing, to misfocus by ever so slightly amount. If you're shooting around about that f2.5, because of the sheer volume of resolution and detail in the Hasselblad's files, you actually do get back to your computer quite a bit and you go, that bit, maybe I was focusing on an eye, that it's just off, like just off the focus plane, and that can become quite frustrating. In addition to the autofocusing, something which is totally missing this time from the Hasselblad, and obviously this is an intentional choice by them, but it is video performance. You literally cannot shoot video on this $12,000 camera, whereas the X100VI, especially now that it comes with IBIS, actually shoots pretty good video. I've shot videos on the X100VI from time to time. Maybe I'm like traveling and it's the only camera I've had available. I've always been really pleasantly surprised because it has an inbuilt ND filter as well. You're actually able to shoot really high quality video out of this camera. It can definitely tide you over if you're in a pinch, you don't have access to a larger video camera. And again, just no go on the Hasselblad. Something which I haven't seen talked about that much online is the menu performance and almost like just the actual operation of the camera itself. Hasselblad have the best camera menu system that I've actually ever used on a camera. It is so easy to use, so well organized. It's all pretty much controlled with this touch screen on the back, but it is just very, very well laid out. Compare that to the Fuji, it's like not bad, but there is tons of, you probably get a bit more customization, but everything is very buried. It's not very quick. There's like 18 different ways to set up the camera, which again is good for customization, but is just not good for ease of use and almost like getting to that setting that you want right away. Whereas on the Hasselblad, it is an absolute breeze. You can tell they have spent a ton of time making this thing as easy and as efficient to use for professional photographers. Okay, so I've obviously been through these points one by one, the kind of differences, but the overall biggest difference is of course that medium format versus crop, the sensor size difference between these two cameras. I know that sounds incredibly obvious, and from the outset of the video I was saying, of course it is a bit ridiculous to compare these two camera systems, but I do think it's important if potentially you are like maybe thinking about buying this camera, or you don't own an X100VI and you're just wondering how much better a camera like this one might be than something like this. There is not many times at all where you're going to miss having medium format. Each RAW with this camera taken is 200 megabytes, plus it's slow to take photos with because of that. Each photo has to be much more considered. Like, I'll give you an example. The other day I was shooting at a gig, and just like a gig that I was attending, and because of the form factor, the speed, the ease of use of the Fuji, I was able to get moments, interactions, experiences I just never would have been able to get on the X100VI, and nobody would ever say to me, can we zoom in, can we punch in 400% on an image like that? No, that's kind of not what it's about. It's about capturing a unique moment on a camera in the best possible way, and I just wouldn't be able to do that with a camera like the Hasselblad. And this one is of course going to come back to your own personal experience. Do you need medium format? And for me the answer is obviously just no. Most of my work is online. I just don't need the fidelity of cameras like that. And that's almost like takes us full circle, because most of the things that I love about the Fujifilm X100VI, it's my favorite camera that I've ever owned. Most of those things are actually direct opposites on the Hasselblad. This is small, it's light, this is heavy and beautifully built, but it is actually not something which I would walk around with or take with me on a regular basis, because one, it's very expensive, and two, it's just obviously not designed for everyday use. This is unobtrusive, people don't notice it. You're able to capture amazing street photos. This is kind of big and relatively in your face, and if you had a larger lens on here, things would be noticeable. And I personally don't think the image quality difference is significant enough to actually make up for a lot of those factors. For some people, you are never going to be able to get away from a tool like this, because the type of work and the type of images you want to create require a tool like this. but I'm just saying you can get very far now with a tool like the X100VI.